All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Palm Springs and the Esri Developer Summit. My name is Jeff Rogers. I work on the geocoding team. My role is on the geocoding team is the program manager. So I'm responsible for the software releases. I work with our product management team and our product engineering team to make sure that we're releasing the right functionality that meets the needs of developers and different organizations that are working with geocoding across the ArcGIS platform. I'd like to introduce Brad Neiman. Brad, you want to say a word or two about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a product engineer on the geocoding team, lead product engineer on the geocoding team. I work with Jeff to essentially do all the things he just said, make sure we release good, high quality software.
All right. Also, we have with us today Nick Patel, and he's the product manager for geocoding and network analysis teams. And he works a lot on the business side, the marketing side, the planning side. Helps us with the development of our software. So if you hadn't guessed today, the topic that we're going to talk about is we're going to introduce you to what's new with the ArcGIS Online World Geocoding capability. We do a session like this at the user conference every year where we kind of talk about it more from a product side and also from a usability side, how it surfaces itself in the software. But today we're going to focus a little bit more sort of on the developer story and some of the new capabilities that we've added into the system that developers can take advantage of when they're building applications. And so we made a lot of changes or enhancements to the system over the last year. We want to introduce you to some of those capabilities so that you'll be familiar with them. You can take advantage of them well when you're building applications. And some of these things are things you can take advantage of. Some of these things are just built right in. We just thought it would be a good idea to introduce you to some of these things so that you'll recognize them when you see them. All right. So just to get started here, I want to introduce you to a couple of resources. The first resource is let's take a look at the one on the right. And this is every time we update the World Geocoding service. We've been doing that typically 4 times a year. And each time we do that, we provide a bunch of information there about what's new. You can see different quality improvements and different functionality improvements. And so this information is always released with the World Geocoding service when we do an update, and you can find it on our developers site. There's a URL that I provided down here. So a lot of the information we'll be talking about today, you could also find at that resource each time there's a software release. Some other information that'll be useful, when we have new functionality that we're introducing that we think will be compelling and interesting for you to learn a little bit more about, we'll do a blog. So we worked with Nick on doing a blog for a release that we did earlier in 2017, and we provided a lot of information about the enhancements to the system. And so there's an opportunity there to even send in a little bit of feedback and get involved in the blog and interact with us in that way. And so we suggest that these are 2 different things that you can follow up on or look for to find out more information about what's new with World Geocoding. And these are opportunities outside of sessions that we have at the user conference and at the developer summit. So please take advantage of those resources. Search for geocoding on the ArcGIS blog site, and that you'll find other articles, not just that one. All right, so we want to just jump right in. So we released a pretty major enhancement back in earlier this year, sort of in the middle of 2017, where we added a lot of great new functionality into the World Geocoding capability. And I'm talking about the World Geocoding service. This is the service that's built into a lot of ArcGIS apps. It's built into Pro, it's built into Online, it's built into ArcMap. And it's built into many of our mobile applications, and at the same time, you can interact with it using our developer APIs. And so one of the capabilities that we wanted to point out is that we made some great enhancements to our reverse geocoding capability. Reverse geocoding now has the ability to not just return an address at a location, but it could return information about a POI. You can see an example here where if I was to pass in a location that's on the top of the conference center, I can get back a full description of the conference center itself. So I can now understand not just the address, but the name of the place and maybe some other properties about it, what type of a place it is and some other information about it. At the same time, we've enabled reverse geocoding for postal and also localities. And localities might be things like neighborhoods or cities or states or provinces, or even a country. So if you're trying to reverse geocode and you're out in an area that's not densely populated, we could at least give you some information back about what else is there from sort of a locality or a postal code standpoint, so that you have some reference for that location where there might not be a populated area. There might not be streets or buildings or houses, and so what we're doing is we're able to take advantage of all these different types of information. By default, we're going to return the most confident answer based on all this information. So we use a bit of a hierarchical structure where, first we might look to see if there's a street intersection which is close. If we can't find a street intersection, we'll look for a street address, a POI centroid, a point address, and you can see there's sort of a hierarchy to this. And so we're trying to give you the most confident answer based on the location that you're passing in. And so this is by default. This is how a reverse geocoding request works now. You pass in a location and we give you back the most confident answer based on a hierarchy of different types of features that are in the system. Now, as a developer, you might want to have a little bit more control over that. You might want to say, look, I'm always looking to get back a postal code, or I'm always looking to get back a city, or maybe I'm always looking to get back the nearest intersection. Well, we've introduced a new capability that you can take advantage of. Actually, first, before we introduce the new capability, I'm just going to let Brad do a quick demo of what I just talked about so that you can kind of see that in action.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, as Jeff mentioned, we do a lot better job now of taking this hierarchy, using the data, the polygons and things to give back more relevant information. Instead of maybe snapping to a street address that's kind of far away or a point address that's further away, we give you more relevant information. So let me go ahead and zoom over to Palm Springs Convention Center. And I'll go ahead and show you that if I use the What's Here functionality in Pro, right on top of the convention center, I click What's Here. You can see that I get back the actual point of interest, the POI, Palm Springs Convention Center. In addition to that, we have other things like localities that we can find now. So a little to the east, right by the 10 freeway, there's this big brown open spot. Nothing really there. If I say, hey, what's here? I'm actually going to get back just the city, in this case, Rancho Mirage. Also, there's this brown area just north of the 10. So let's see what we get when we say what's here. In this case, it's actually going to give back the postal code because it's a better match in this situation. Following that, what if I was to click right here on the 10 freeway? What would we get back? What should we get back? Well, we should get back a street name match that says this is the 10 freeway. Let's also see, okay. What about if I was to say what's here right in the middle of this country club? So it looks like in this case, we don't actually have a POI for that country club, but we have the next best thing. We have a point address match, so we're able to give that back as well. Finally, if I was to click right on this street right here, it's going to give back a street address range. So it's actually going to give back the range information because we actually have ranges. So the next best thing in that location. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Jeff so that you can talk a little bit more about that developer experience.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about a new capability or a new feature that we've added to the reverse geocoding API. We wanted to give more control over the types of features that are returned. So for example, if you're building a custom application and your application wants to pass in a location and just find out what's the administrative area associated with it, or in these terms, the locality, you could pass in a value using a new feature type parameter that works with a reverse geocoding and get back the locality. So I've got some different examples here of how this works. I've got one location, and I pass in that location with 4 different feature types. And in each case, I'm actually getting back a different answer for that location. So if I'm passing in that location and asking for the point address at that location, I get back the point address information. If I'm asking for the postal code, I'll get back the postal code information. And if I'm asking for the locality, it will tell me that it's in the Marina District in San Diego. And if I ask for the closest POI, it's actually saying the closest POI is the San Diego Convention Center and entrance B for the San Diego Convention Center. So depending on the type of application you're building and your your workflow. This gives you a new way to sort of drill down on different types of information and get it back as part of a reverse geocoding request. So interesting new capability. So let's take a look at another capability that we've added to the developer API supporting reverse geocoding. So we have provided now more control over the type of location that can be returned using a location type parameter. So if you click, for example, or if you pass in a location, we give you two options. One type of location is we'll give you the location back that's on the side of the street. Why might that be useful? If you're building a routing application or a navigation type of application, or an application that wants to get somebody to a location on the street, which might be where you would enter that building from the street, you can request the street location back. We also have an alternate location which might be used for map display or for other types of uses, which would typically be the parcel centroid or maybe the rooftop of the building. So by passing in the street location, you can get back a location on the street and a description associated with the location on the street. And the same thing for rooftop, you can get back a rooftop location. So if your application, typically you want to show that point on the top of the building or on the top of the address, you'd use the location parameter. But if you wanted to show something that might be more appropriate for a routing application or something where somebody was making deliveries, you could ask for the roof or the street location. So another new capability that's part of the reverse geocoding API. So let's take a look at how we've enhanced intersection matching. I think there's some really interesting stuff going on here. So we've enhanced our intersection matching capability in a couple of ways. The first thing that we can do is we can now find intersections that are maybe logical intersections, but aren't instances where features in the data are connected. So here's some different examples. We've got a cul-de-sac and a street that passes very close to it. Somebody might be standing at that point and saying, I'm at a location which is close to this cul-de-sac and this street, in which case we could return a location for it. So very, very simply, we can type in the name of the cul-de-sac and the name of the street and maybe the town that it's in, and we can return that as an intersection. In the data, those features aren't actually connected, so they don't represent a true intersection, but it's a way that we can sort of more accurately model somebody's perception of things as they're out in the field and at a location. Here's another example. We can do something similar where roads pass over but don't physically intersect. You can see you've got a freeway that's passing on top of a local street. I can type in the name of the freeway and the local street name, and we're able to find that location. And so that's another enhancement, another capability to be able to find intersections where things pass over or under each other. Then finally, I've got another example of this working. This is you can see here that there's maybe 5 different streets that enter a roundabout, and this is at a location in the United Kingdom. The roundabout itself has its own name, and each one of the streets have their own name. But in this case, if you entered in 2 of the streets that were connecting into the roundabout, they don't actually intersect each other. But in this case, we can find a location that represents where those 2 segments might actually come close together. So if someone was out in the field reporting a location and saying, I'm at Park and Tring, or I'm at the location where Park and Tring intersect, but if they don't physically intersect in the data, we can still find that location. So extended the capabilities for the different types of intersections we can find in the system, and I think that really helps. Another thing we've done is in the past we kind of required that the street type was entered as part of the query. So you might have to type in Sean Court and Ligonia Ave, Redlands. We've kind of reduced that requirement now to the point where you can type in much less information to find the place that you're looking for. And I think in a lot of applications that's critical, is that aspect of time. I want to be able to type something in very quickly and get to that location because I've got something that needs to be done there in a timely manner. So let's talk a little bit about related to, I just talked about how we've improved intersections. We've also added a capability into the API to do suggestions for intersections. So in real time, you can start typing New York, and in this case, I've typed the first 2 characters of Redlands, and you can see in real time we're providing some suggestions. Brad's going to show how this works. And another thing we've done is that in our suggestions capability, we've added in what we consider a way that we can verify an address that you're typing in against what's in the data. So here's an example where we've typed in 999 New York Street, and that's a real address. We have it in the data, and so we're showing a suggestion for it, a suggestion candidate, which you can then pick and zoom directly to it. But in real time here, we've typed an extra 9 in the second example, and there is no address for 9999 New York Street in the local area. So we're showing fallback candidates, which are New York Street in different postal codes in that area. So we're giving you an indication that we couldn't actually find that address. And so we're giving you sort of a more accurate representation of what's in the data. So I think next I'm going to pass it back to Brad, and he's going to give us a little demonstration, or give us a demonstration of how both of these capabilities would work in an application or in our software.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, so still in Pro here, I'm going to open the Locate pane, and I'm using the online service, and I'll go ahead and first show intersection geocoding suggestions, intersection suggestions. I type in Redlands and new, and you can see already, I didn't have to type in because it's West Redlands Boulevard and New York Street. It's starting to show Redlands Pines and New York Street, West Redlands Boulevard and New York Street. And I had to type in very little information, and it's quick. So let me give another example here of what Jeff was mentioning as an intersection enhancement, which is also part of the suggestions API, orange and 10. And you can see that all I had to do was type in Orange Street and the I-10. This actually, when I zoom to it, it's actually not a physically intersecting intersection. It's a logical intersection. So let me just turn on the, and you can see here that we have overpass, and Orange Street actually is underneath. So we're able to do that with suggestions as well. Next thing I want to show here is the ability to show the ability to show that the house number is verified. If I just type in 380 New York Street, which is the address of Esri, you can see that it's validated that this is the actual house number. But as Jeff was saying, if I was to type in 9999 New York Street, you can see that the only suggestions it's giving me now are for the street name itself. So that's the best match that we could give you, the best suggestion we can give you. Finally, in some areas of the world, the house number actually comes after the street name. So I'm going to zoom over to, turn the streets back on, zoom over to Spain and actually type in an address where the house number actually comes after the street name. So Calais Progreso 10. And you can see that after I typed in 10, I'm actually getting suggestions for the house number 10, but if I type in a 2, I still get suggestions, but if I type in one more number, a 5, now the only thing I'm getting are street name matches. So it's actually doing this data verification on the fly. So that's it for the demo, so I'll pass it back over to Jeff.
Good. So let's talk about some additional enhancements that I think are really going to help with some workflows in the API. So we've extended the API to accept more input address fields. So in the past, the API would have an input address field for address and city and state and postal code. And if you had a spreadsheet and you had your address information, such as your house number and your street name and maybe your apartment and unit information in separate fields, the API really required you to concatenate those together all into a single field. We have a way now where you can pass those in 3 different fields. So we've got an address input field. We've also added an Address2 input field and an Address3 input field. So if you're working with a spreadsheet, for example, and you're building a UI and you're trying to map the fields into the spreadsheet into the API to do the geocoding process, we have a capability now where you can pass those in as separate fields, and the system will still be able to work with those passed in as separate fields. So here's an example where I've got a spreadsheet that has the name of a place, Esri, the street number 380, and the name of the street, New York York Street, we can pass those in using those 3 different fields and get back a result. So it may simplify how you build some user interfaces for doing batch geocoding. Here's a second example where things are shifted around a little bit, or we have different information. We have a spreadsheet with a number, a street value, and a unit, such as an apartment. And you could pass those in those 3 fields and also expect to get a result. So a nice enhancement to the API to give a little bit more flexibility when working with data that's in multiple fields. All right, so here's another interesting capability that we've added, and I think it's it's something that we really wanted to point out because we think it's a nice improvement. So we've added the ability to match a house number out of range. So what does that mean? So let me explain this. So we've got one street in a town, and the street is called Main Street. The starting address on that street is 11, and the ending address is 99. In the past, if we had an address come in, such as 105 Main Street, that address or house number doesn't exist in this range. So what we would do is fall back to the street name, and we'd place that point in the middle of Main Street. Now, it makes sense that that's number, we know something about that number. We know that it's at the end of that range, or that it goes beyond that range. And if we don't have a street that includes that, another street that includes that range, we've added this capability to actually place the point for that address at the end of the range. And we now assign a new value to that. So the address type in this case would be street address extension. So you're going to know the cases. So by default, we turn this on in the World Geocoding service. So some of the results you may now see have a value of address type equal to street address extension. You can disable that if you like, by passing in the value equal to false. But I think it's a good enhancement. We think that it's much more spatially accurate to put that at the end of the segment, close to that number, than it is to fall back to the center of the segment. So another great capability that we've added into the system that's available for you to take advantage of today. There's more information about how this works at these URLs on the bottom of the page. So take a look at that, and you may want to take advantage of it. And note again, the key thing to note is the additional address type that gets output when that type of a match happens. Okay, so another interesting capability that we've added is that we now have the ability to return results by language where the data exists in our system. So here's a case where we've passed in a city name in Japan, and that's the input. So the input is in Japanese characters, and somebody may have taken that out of a spreadsheet or got it from some database. They actually want to find the location for that, but they also might want to label it or return back information in the English language. So in this case, we've actually added a new capability or a language code parameter that works with find address candidates and reverse geocoding, where you can specify the preferred language of the output. And so in this case, in the first case, you can see we haven't passed in the parameter, and we're getting back a result in Japanese. In the second case, we passed in the parameter requesting the language code equal to English, and we're returning back the value of the location in English. So if you're building applications and you have some need to do some localization or to prefer returning results back in a specific language, we have that capability built into the API, and you can take advantage of it today. And there is some more information about supported language codes on the developer site at our geocoding coverage page. And so the URL is here, and you could learn more about the different supported languages. All right, so let's talk about improved POI search and geocoding. So this year, we added a new capability into the system where we can not just batch geocode addresses, but we can batch geocode all sorts of different types of features that you might consider to be a POI. Here's a couple examples. I might have a spreadsheet, and the only thing in my spreadsheet is Palm Springs Convention Center. we could match that now in batch geocoding. So we have the data, we have the information about the Palm Springs Convention Center and its site. It's not an address, but it is a description of the location, and it's in a spreadsheet. We can now match it. And you can see some different ways that we can match. These are results that might be in a spreadsheet or data that might be in a spreadsheet, and it's parsed out into different fields. The second example here is a coffee shop, and it has information about the address. We can take all that information and use it to create an accurate match. You'll also see there's another example where we have the name of a coffee shop, and we have the address for it, but we don't have the city or the state or the postal. There's actually enough information here that we can use to match that accurately doing a batch geocoding process or an interactive geocoding process. And in my final example here, I've got a situation where I have the name of the coffee shop, and I only have the postal code. And because I only have the postal code, and there are 4 of those coffee shops with that name inside that postal code, in that case, we would return the batch geocode result as a tie, and potentially you could return up to, in this case, 4 different candidates for it. So the key thing that I'm trying to, this is a great capability to take advantage of. It works with all kinds of addressing information that also includes descriptive information about the place. But the key thing is you need at least enough information to make that result unique if you're using it in batch geocoding and you don't want to produce a tie. So another way to take advantage of our new system is ability to batch geocode with POIs in places. This also works with other things, like if you have a spreadsheet of parks and just the name of the park, maybe they're national parks, or it's a spreadsheet of airport names, other things like that. These work now using the system. Okay. So a couple new things that enhancements that we've added to the system. These were based on requests. We have different agencies and organizations that are interested in doing MGRS and USNG or US National Grid geocoding. We've added that to the system. It's built in now. As a developer, you don't need to do anything different or special. You don't need to pass in any special values. You can just pass in a grid coordinate, and we'll find it and return a location for it. You can see we'll even return the type of thing that we found. In this case, we didn't input that it was an MGRS coordinate, but we found that coordinate and we returned the type as MGRS. Some additional enhancements for coordinate geocoding. We now support degrees, minutes, and seconds geocoding, and there's several different formats of that we can handle. So if you're not just working in decimal degrees, but if you're working in degrees, minutes, seconds, we can handle those types of requests and find a location for it. And you'll see in that case we pass back an address type equal to lat long for that coordinate string. There's more information about geocoding with coordinates and what different types of schemes and formats we support, also available on our developer site under the geocoding API reference. Okay, just some key points about our world geocoding capability, from a data content perspective. We've really put a lot of effort over the last year into not only enhancing the content for the countries that we're already providing, but also expanding our coverage to allow organizations to geocode at a greater level of precision in more regions or more parts of the world. So we're now up to about 135 countries where we have address data and you could geocode down to an address level. And so you can see those areas I've highlighted. These are new areas that sort of came online for us in 2017, where we can do that sort of deeper level of address geocoding. And that totals now up to about 135 countries. You can see the other countries shaded in gray here, where we have already reasonable quality of geocoding. We have some different information for the different color shades that kind of show you what your expectation is for the detail and precision of geocoding that you could expect in those countries. Information like this is available again on our developer site under our geocoding coverage reference area. So we're constantly working on enhancing the geocoding coverage in terms of its breadth and also its precision. Okay. So let's take a look at another great new capability that we've added into the system. So this is a capability that organizations can take advantage of if they're building applications or working with applications that that work with ArcGIS Online. So we talked a lot already about how you can use the API to get specific results back, for geocoding, and you can get focused results back. We've added a new capability into the system that allows organizations to configure ArcGIS Online with a thing that we call a locator view. What a locator view is it's really a filter that exists on top of the world geocoding capability. And so if you are trying to build a specific application, you have an application that's all about maintenance for airports, or it's all about focused area of expectation. So all the work is being done in a small area. Or if you want to localize your application so that results just come back for a certain country, we've added this new concept where you can define a locator view inside of ArcGIS Online. You can share it with members of your organization, and then within the applications, the ArcGIS applications that they're using, or within custom applications that you build, they can have this custom geosearch or geocoding experience that's focused for that application. And this doesn't require specific programming to do this, but it's a way that you can configure the system to get different types of results. So 3 different sort of patterns that can be used here. One is we can we can support filtering for a specific area. In this case, we've created a filter around the area of Redlands, California, and very simply by just typing in 4 letters, we can see all the things that are associated with those 4 letters in that local area. And we're not getting back results outside of that area or in other countries or that aren't relevant to the work that we're doing. And Brad's going to show us how we can configure this and how we can work with it. Also, we can specify results for a defined set of countries. Maybe your organization has their operations in 2 countries, and you only want to see addresses or places or POIs in your GeoSearch results or in your batch geocoding results for those 2 countries. We can filter out all the rest. We have a way to do that in the system. And then we have a way to filter results for different types of features. So in this case, we've set up a system, or we've set up a filter or a locator view, I should call it a locator view, where we're just returning results back for features that are associated with airports. And so you can see in this case, simply typed in 3 letters, and the first thing that comes back is SeaTac Airport. And there are a couple candidates for it, different terminals that are associated with the airport, another airport in Texas, and even another one, a landing strip in Kansas. So if you were building that focused application and you wanted those certain types of things to come back, you can do this in a configurable way and share it across an organization. There's more information about this capability. We, again, created a blog for it. And we've shared that out, for you to review and learn more about the capability. I think next I'm going to, pass it over to Brad, and Brad's going to actually walk us through the different steps to create a locator view in ArcGIS Online, and then show you how this just works, inside of the different applications within your organization, both the ArcGIS applications and the custom applications you're building. So Brad.
Yep. Okay. So, as Jeff was saying, we have this new capability, Locator Views, for ArcGIS.com. What I've done here is I've logged into my organizational account, and right now I'm in my content. And what you would do is there's this ability to create, and then you would choose to create a locator view. You would give it a name. I'm going to do one of the examples that Jeff was mentioning, so USA airports. I'm just going to copy that. It's the tag and the summary, and click OK. What it'll do is it's actually going to create an item in your content, and then afterwards it's going to let you know, okay, we've created this locator view in your content. Now it's your responsibility to go in and just configure it to be specific to what you want it to do. So let's go ahead, and I clicked OK, and let's scroll down to the locator view settings section. And you can see here that it has this, what types of locations do you want to find? So you can set it up so it's finding all types of locations, but that you're actually creating a view on the actual location, whether it be a country or a specified area. So what I'm going to do for this one is, let's go through this real quick. So you have the option you could select addresses, postal codes, populated places. This gives you the ability to be more focused with, let's say you want to do batch geocoding, but you want to only match to address level. So for instance, you could do sub-address, point address, street address, distance marker, intersection. Well, let's say we don't want any less precision than that. We would uncheck street name, uncheck postal, and uncheck all these populated places areas like sector, neighborhood, city, etc. And then if we created this view on this, we would know that all geocodes that happened for this view would be at the precision that we wanted to match at. But for this demo, I'll go ahead and show you the places of interest one that we were talking about. And so we're going to do an airport, US airport. So we're going to uncheck these other POIs categories, education, food, shops, and services. So we have airport, and like we want the US only. So we select a specific country. And I'm going to just type in here, United States, and here's the option. Click it, moves it over to the right side, and that's all we would have to do here. So you'd click Save, and your locator view is configured for US airports. So the next thing you would have to do is you need to share this view so that other people in your organization or other people outside of your organization would actually have access to it. In this case, I'm going to share it with my organization. So I'm going to go ahead and click My Organization, which is ArcGIS for Transportation Analytics, and then click OK. Now that I've shared it with my organization, I'm just going to go ahead. So the next thing you would need to do in order for your organization to be able to find it without actually having to look for it without a URL is you would have your administrator, in this case I am also an administrator, add it as a utility service to your organization. So I'll go ahead and show that workflow now. Go to the Organization tab, go to Edit Settings, and there's an ability to change your utility services, and you can add a locator. So because we've already created this locator and it's in our organization, there's the ability to add a locator from an existing locator. And there it is, USA Airports. So I'll select that one. In addition to the locator name and everything, you can actually change the placeholder text. So I don't want it to say find a place or address. I want it to say find an airport. So I'll change that as well. Click OK. Now I'm going to save. And now we can actually go ahead and give that a try. So let's go to the map. Now, all of our utility services will actually show up in the map as an option here. So you can either search on all of them, you can search on just the Esri World Geocoder, or even just the US airports. So first, to just give you an example of what this looks like, I'm just going to type in SEA. And you can see that it gives suggestions for all locators that are utility service. And you can see that SEA gives SeaWorld, Seattle, Seafood, etc., Sears. But U.S. airports will give, SeaTac, and some Seaburg Ranch Airport in Texas. But if we wanted to just see those results, we could choose that and type in, let's try, LA, for instance. Now we see LA Airport, or, we could type in Palm Springs and get Palm Springs International Airport. But it's only giving us airports, which is the whole point of this locator view, to have very specific search results for your geocoding.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. So one of the more popular use cases for this capability is organizations that are working in a very, within a geographic area. So they might be working in a city or in a county or, in a specific country, and it's, a popular way to restrict the results to that, and then, be able to, find the thing you're looking for more quickly and to limit the results, to your area of focus and to your area of study. So great. So that was Brad's demo. So those were really the highlights that we wanted to cover today, and we wanted to leave about 15 minutes at the end of the session today for some questions. Before we take the questions, though, I'd just like to mention that if we'd encourage you to take our survey. If there's anything that you'd like to see us include at next year's session or to improve on, or if there's anything that wasn't clear, or if you love the session, thought it was great and learned a lot, we'd also appreciate that feedback. You can do that by downloading the Esri Events app, find your event, find this session, select that session, and then provide feedback to our team. We appreciate your feedback. So next slide, I think, is all about questions. So we wanted to open it up and take questions. If there was something you saw today that you have a question about, or maybe something about the World Geocoding capability that we didn't cover today that you'd like to ask us, please do so. I see there's a question at the back. Yes?
Can you only make locator views on the world locator, or let's say if my organization already knows the locator service on ArcGIS server?
Yeah. Good question. So the question is about, can you make a locator view on top of a hosted locator service that your organization might be hosting from a custom locator, maybe from a street map premium locator? So the first implementation of this is with the World Geocoding capability, and we're definitely interested in looking at how we could share this capability with other locators that organizations are building and maintaining themselves. That capability is not there today, but I think it's something that we're working towards. So
how many
yes,
are interested?
how many? Yeah, we'd be interested. How many would be interested in using that on their own locators? So okay, so
Cool.
quite a few. So we'll take that under advisement and work towards that. Pardon me? So the credit model for views is the same as the standard one. You can create as many different views as you want, and if those are batch geocode requests where you're restoring the results, yes. If they're interactive requests where you're just viewing it on the map, no. So okay. Another question right up front here.
So some of the functionality like reverse geocoding, is it only available through API, or is it available already now, and also will it be available through
ArcGIS Pro. So the question about the sort of the new reverse geocoding capability, a lot of those capabilities are just built in now. So if you want to get back information, I think Brad showed a demo using ArcGIS Pro, and you could see that when he was clicking around the map, he was using the World Geocoding service, and he was getting back different types of results: POI results, street address results, street intersection results. Some of those capabilities are built right in. If you want to customize some of those capabilities, you can do that through the REST API and through writing a custom application. I think over time you may see, we showed this capability called Locator Views, where you can have some control over how the results come back into the apps that you build and also into the default apps. I think maybe there's some interest in seeing more of the customization that you can do with the API be part of those locator views, so that it doesn't necessarily require programming. But we'd be interested in your feedback on that. Would it be of value for organizations to be able to really customize the locating service from a view perspective, without having to do programming, and then being able to share that with different people in the organization. Right now, these new capabilities that we talked about are available with the World Geocoding capability, the online World Geocoding service. We're also intending to extend them to locators that organizations build locally. And so right now, those are working with the World Geocoding service. In the future, our goal is to make those same capabilities available with the locators that you build with the data that you're working with. So, I think there was another question back here. Yes. Yeah, that's right. You got it.
My question is the data verification enhancement that you showed.
Yes.
Is it available for JavaScript API as well?
Yeah, so the question was about the data verification that we showed, where when Brad typed in a house number for a street address that didn't exist, yes, it's available across the APIs. It just works by default now. It's a new capability that we've added. As a developer, you don't need to do anything to take advantage of it. It should be built in, yes. In the applications that Esri builds, if you're working in Pro, if you're working in ArcGIS Online, that will be built into that environment.
Yeah,
by
so there's
default.
no additional parameters that need to be sent. So just using suggestions or just using find does it automatically. So if the application supports it.
Yeah.
About the language, is it required?
So the question, there's a follow-up question about the language and the language parameter. So some applications are smart and they know the locale of your local machine, and they'll be able to pass that in with their request. And so in those cases, that environment would return back the localized result. If you're building your own application, you may want to do some customization if you know where that application is being deployed or what environment it's being deployed on. Some operating systems, for example, will have the locale that you can get from your application from the operating system, find out what the locale is, pass it in the request, and then you'd get back that localized version. So some applications, Esri applications, that's already built in. Other applications that it may not be there yet. Maybe some custom applications that you're building, you want to take advantage of it now and pass in that additional information based on information you get from the user's local settings and configuration. So.
Oh, it is a parameter.
Yeah.
It's a REST parameter.
It's a REST parameter.
Yeah, for both find and reverse.
No, I understand.
UI?
Yeah. So if your point is if you were configuring maybe a locator view and you wanted it to be a default for that view, yes, no, it's not there in that capacity today, but that's good feedback. We might. Yeah. Okay. So there were a couple more questions. We'll take this one back here.
You were showing different feature types that you could get back on reverse geocoding.
Yes.
Is it possible to get multiple feature types in one request?
Excellent question. So the question was about using the feature types, the new feature types parameter that's available with reverse geocoding. Currently what we do is you can pass in multiple ones. So you can pass in multiple feature types, but based on the hierarchy that we talked about, we would return just the first most precise one. But we are interested in kind of having this discussion around, would it be useful to click on the map and not just get back one, but get back many feature types. So get back a collection of different types of features that might be at that location. And I think that's what you're asking. And that capability is not there today. But again, we're interested in if organizations are interested in that, like you've shown some interest, that could be a future enhancement where we return back a set of features for all of those different feature types that you passed in. Yeah, so. There was a question up front here. Yes.
Martin Luther King Jr. That street causes my staff so many problems. They misspell it. They misspell it J-O-M-O-K, M-O-K-J-R period,
Okay.
Junior spell.
Sure.
Is there any
So
preference or
we support many different permutations of that, which are built into the system. If you're aware of a permutation that's not working, please let us know, and we'd be more than happy to look at how we could take it into consideration. But we do. I think there must be 20 or 25 different permutations. MLK, Luther, King. You could think of all the different combinations. You've got Martin, Luther, King, and then you've also got some cases like maybe Doctor added to the front of it as well. And so when you take 4 or 5 different tokens and you come up with all the abbreviations and different permutations, it's pretty extensive. So again, if you're interested in if you've got some cases that aren't working, please let us know about it, and we'd love to take a look at it. We think we have it covered, but we're always willing to learn of more cases. So yeah, question back here.
So you mentioned that there were 135 countries that you had mapping data for.
So let me clarify. If we have 135 different countries where we have some reasonable mapping data down to the street address level. For the rest of the world, we may have places of interest or postal codes or administrative territories, city names, village names, town names. So really we do have a world coverage, but now we have 135 countries where we've got that detailed, in many cases down to the street level capability for geocoding.
So I like the language where you can kind of change the input, output, or different languages.
Yes.
How many languages are there?
Good question. So we have a page that's part of our reference information. It's part of our geocoding coverage documentation, which explains all of the different countries that we cover, the depth of geocoding we can go down to, and what the expectation for sort of a level of precision would be in that country. We also talk about the different languages that we support. Now, one of the key aspects is the data coverage is an important part. So there may be some countries where we have records for the entire country that are covered in one language, but only records for 50 or 60% that are covered in another language. So in those cases where you might be passing in my example, Japanese, and you're asking for English, but if we don't have the English equivalent, we'll still return the result in Japanese because we didn't have the English equivalent. So it really depends on the locale and the percentage of coverage and what's in the data. So, yeah. Question at the back?
I guess I have a follow-up to that locator view again.
Yes.
Is it only available on ArcGIS Online, or would you be able to propagate that down to the desktop, whether it's on Pro or ArcMap?
Okay, so the question's about the locator views and if it's available in ArcGIS Online. So if you have an organization in ArcGIS Online and you have users in your organization that are connected to that same ArcGIS Online organization, and they're working in ArcMap or Pro or a client that's working with the World Geocoding Service, maybe a custom client or a custom application, and while they're logged in and connected to that ArcGIS Online organization, they will be able to use that locator view. Yes.
Can you use it for the batch processing as well?
So the question about is, does this work for batch processing as well? So I will.
You're
yes,
referring to the
to the locator
language?
views.
Language.
To the language code. So the language code, I think I checked this last week. Brad may double check on it right now. I believe the language code works for reverse geocoding, find address candidates, interactive geocoding. It's not yet enabled for batch geocoding. So,
Yeah, I believe you're
but if that's interesting for you, that's something we could do. So if you have a spreadsheet of addresses, so the question is, if I had a spreadsheet of addresses and they were all in Japanese and you pass them in, could you match them and return the actual address in English? I think the answer today is no, but we're interested in that feedback, and I think that would be useful for some organizations. So, good. Another question back there? We've got one more up here.
The geocoding service, the result, does it provide the admin code information like the county code? For example, for Canadian address, does it provide looking for the province code and the
Got it. So,
region code?
okay. So the question is about if I were to, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I were to geocode an address in Canada, we're returning today the municipality, we're returning the postal code, we're returning the state or the province in the case of Canada. Does it also return a code for that? So in the United States, for example, we might have something called FIPS codes, and there would be a 5-digit code for a county and a 2-digit code for a state. So the answer to that is today we do not do that. If you wanted to append additional maybe demographic information or codes, you might look at our enrichment or geo-enrichment services for doing that. But I think it's interesting feedback. So the answer is no, today we don't do it, but it's good feedback and it might be something to consider. The other option is to look at our geo-enrichment services, which may return more information related to codes for different types of locations. Yeah. Another question here.
Is it possible to use the world geocoding in a local environment?
Is it possible to use the world geocoding capability in a local environment? I'm happy to say yes, it is. Esri has a version of the world geocoding service that can be deployed on site behind the firewall and works with ArcGIS portal. That product is called the World Geocoder. and it's available for organizations that want to run the entire world geocoding capability, inside their firewall or inside their enterprise organization. Yeah.
How is the data deployed in that case?
We deploy a locator for the world, and so the solution is based on ArcGIS server, ArcGIS portal, and a locator that can be deployed to work in that environment. So.
Is there interest in that solution?
So are there persons in the room today who might be interested in doing world geocoding behind the firewall? Okay, it looks like we've got a few. So maybe so Nick's a good person to talk to about that. If you have an interest in that and you have a few seconds after, you might want to meet Nick and talk to him about that, and he could maybe share some more information with you. Another question up front here.
Talk a little bit about data refreshing and updating, and
Yes.
especially that behind the firewall version. How would
Yeah.
that locator get updated?
Good question. So, yeah. So the question was about the update, the content frequency. So I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we update the system typically 4 times a year. We update it with each ArcGIS Online release. Another great enhancement that I didn't talk about today, but I think is worth mentioning, is each time we do that, we're refreshing the data. So we are refreshing it with the latest data from our commercial vendors where that data is available. And so in a lot of cases, that's a major content update, and we're able to do that each quarter. So for example, one of our content providers is here, and we have when we released the last geocoding service update in December of 2017, we released it with here's Q4 2017 data. We'll be doing another release coming up shortly in the next few weeks. That release will include, again, the latest data set available from that provider, and then from other providers where they have that data available. So, in the past, maybe we weren't updating that frequently, but we're now updating that frequently. When it comes to the World Geocoder, we have a different release cycle from that product, but again, that's taking advantage of the latest data that we've produced and made available. So that product is very much in sync as much as it can be with the World Geocoding service and online service capability. So, yep. Any more questions? Yes, up front here.
For hierarchy companies, so let's say you enter a company, is it called, would it be possible in the future to return also, is it like a branch, subsidiary, or branch?
Okay. So the question is about, I've entered in a sort of a business name and a postal code. Would it be possible to return more metadata about those candidates? Is it a branch? Is it main office? We're not doing that today. We're returning back some information. Typically for a location, it would be the name of the location, the address, location information. We might also return a URL if there's a website for that location. And maybe in some cases, even more information than that, sort of describing the organization. We don't, really at this point go much deeper in terms of breaking it down into, is this the main office, is this not? But I think that's interesting. If that's something you're looking at, we may be able to, do that in the future. We may also have other products at Esri that can do some of that information. So the business analyst product, for example, has business listings capability, and they have more information in those business listings that gives you more information about those specific locations. So if that's a need for your business, that might be another product or opportunity to look at. Yeah.
You might want to talk to Ed about it.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yes.
Do you need a developer license to access these APIs, or just an organizational account?
Good question. Do we need a developer license? I think that my recommendation would be to you can learn go to the developer site, developers.arcgis.com, and that will kind of guide you through getting started. It will explain to you what the benefits are of having a developer license, and it will kind of explain to you what you need to do to get signed up and be part of that. And yeah.
So to get started, is at no cost once you deploy the application with the geocoding service. At that point, you would need to subscribe to the developer.
Like web app builder or anything like
Yes, you would need to subscribe to the developer subscription to embed the geocoding service into the application and then deploy.
So your point is maybe you're using Web App Builder, and so Web App Builder, you're creating a custom application that's not really a developer-focused application. In order to run that application, you'd need some logon or credentials in order to run it, in which case, it would be tied to an ArcGIS Online account, and it would sort of follow that model. So
like the function that Brad did with the what's here, when you click on the map, you expose that API so that you don't have to actually click on the map.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can do it. You can do it. So on the developer site, I don't know if maybe Brad could get logged in quickly, and then we could show you how that's done. On the developer site is information about how you can work with the World Geocoding service using a lot of different languages. We kind of did our examples based on REST. There's JavaScript, there's Python, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. And the developer site will kind of take you into all the, provide you with examples for how you can do a lot of these different things in those different environments. Yeah. So
Referring to where do we
just, yeah.
here?
So here's Brad. He's at developers.arcgis.com. And under features is geocoding. So pretty straightforward. And so what we're talking about is ready-to-use geocoding capabilities. But if you scroll down further, let's see, you can, we've got some different examples. Maybe go back up again and click the ready-to-use, Brad.
I think that's the doc.
Yeah, and you can see different examples and patterns for using it in a lot of different environments. So we've got the REST documentation, JavaScript, how to build on Android, iOS, Python, Qt, .NET. So there's a lot of information on this site that'll sort of guide you in the right direction for how to build a custom application using that service, that World Geocoding capability, in the language of or environment of your choice. So, yeah.
Additional question, so when you feed one request to the geocoding service, you don't consume credits. Is there a time limit on how fast those requests can come?
So the question was, so I'll try and answer this if
take it offline.
or maybe we could take it offline. So yeah, we could talk in a little more detail after the session. So yeah. Another question at the back?
When you pass in coordinates, is there a requirement that you have to pass in like X, Y? Can you do the YX? Because sometimes I think that if I pass YX, it doesn't work.
Yes. So the question is there a requirement when you pass in the coordinates to pass them in a specific order? There is a default order, but we also have a parameter that you can use with the service where you can flip those back and forth. Brad, do you have some more information about that?
Are you referring to doing reverse geocoding specifically, or are you trying to find a location on the map just by passing in X, Y?
Yes.
Yeah, so we actually do support both. It's what if you pass in YX or XY, if you pass in and it's an ambiguous situation where X and Y could be, we don't know which one to use, we'll return the XY location before the YX location. But if it's a specific location, then we will pass the YX back if we've determined that it is a lat long as opposed to a long lat. And there is the ability to, there's a category parameter that you can pass in as well. There's a category API, you can look it up on the geocoding website, that if you pass in YX as your category, then we will always default the answer to be, or the result of geocoding to be the YX instead of us trying to determine it on the fly. So we do support it.
Okay. Some more questions? Yes, up front?
When we get the results back from ArcMap or ArcGRO, we have, besides the X and Y, we have X mean, X mark.
Right.
What are
Yes.
those other?
Okay, so the question is about when we get results back from the service, we get back the X and the Y, but we also get back X min, X max, Y min, and Y max. Those values are the recommended sort of map extent. So if you got back a result and you wanted to draw it and zoom to a map extent, that would be the map extent that you zoom to. So what you would notice is if we returned a result back, which was a country such as Canada, you would get a very big map extent. And if you pass that map extent in and generated a map from it, it would be it would mean that Canada was within that map extent. When you geocode a point address, we're going to make that map extent very small so that you can pass that into the map and draw the map at that very sort of local area. So that's what those values are for, and they're used for rendering the map for that feature at an extent which makes sense to draw the feature. Yes. Any more questions? So we're kind of the map extent that we return back, the min-x, max-x values, we've determined that primarily from the data. So if the feature came from a polygon, it was a city boundary, or if it was a park boundary, we've determined that from the data with some small buffer so that that feature would draw in the map. If it's for features that might be points, we've tried to, based on the type of feature it is, we've tried to come up with a reasonable value. Once in a while, from time to time, we get some feedback that, for this location, the map extent isn't quite right, and we can make adjustments for that. So, if you've got feedback for us for specific features where, we're zoomed in too far or zoomed out too far, we can make those kind of adjustments and work with you to get it right so that it draws correctly on the map. So. Any more questions? Yes. Okay, good. So we'll if anyone has any questions they want to talk to us after, we'll be available after the session to to kind of have a side conversation and answer some more questions. Thanks everybody for coming today and spending the time with us to learn a little bit more about world geocoding.
How's it going?